Welcome to the Future of Identity podcast, a show that highlights the world's most innovative digital ID ecosystems and the people behind them. I'm Riley Hughes, co-founder of Trinsic, and we're the first identity acceptance network. Our product is a gateway that helps businesses accept dozens of digital IDs through one seamless integration. Today, I'm here with Robert White, head of Samsung Wallet US. Robert, welcome to the show.
Hey, Riley, great to be here. Thank you.
I'm excited to chat. We've been working together for some time and known each other through the space for a little while, and you've been on my list for a while. I'm glad we've finally got you.
Yeah, me too. It's good to be here.
So Samsung is obviously one of the big three, right, in terms of the big operating system wallets that people think about when they think about digital IDs. Samsung, I don't know if this is true, but my impression is that it's probably the biggest of the three in terms of market share globally, right, in terms of just how many people have the devices. So you have a really big opportunity to make an impact here. I would love to know, maybe before we kind of talk about the big picture, your role specifically, what were you hired to do? And maybe we start there.
Yeah, I guess that's a good question. I wasn't quite hired into this role. I was part of an acquisition of a small company called LoopPay that made a payment technology that was acquired to start Samsung Pay. So we were acquired in 2015. And over the period of time, I've worked in various product roles, business-related roles, and even marketing.
And
so I've kind of jumped in on the digital ID side. I had started the program here in the US from the business angle and started working initially with US states to get mobile driver's license loaded into Samsung Wallet.
Got it. Okay. So when I think about a wallet, there's the sort of supply side and the demand side, right? There's the issuers into the wallet, and then there's the relying parties, as we usually call them, who are the companies that request the IDs out of the wallet. Mm-hmm. Does your scope cover sort of both sides of that, or are you more focused on the issuer side, or how do you think about that?
I would say the scope covers both, but we've been primarily focused on the issuer side. So that's been our goal, is to get as many issuers and credentials into the wallet as the relying party ecosystem starts to grow.
Right. Yeah. So my father-in-law listens to this podcast. Hi, John, if you're listening. He often says, like, I listen to your podcast to support you, but I don't understand a thing you're saying on that thing. So sometimes we are a little bit in the weeds on the identity terminology and things like that. But I thought this would be a good opportunity given Samsung's reach. We'd love to understand, why is Samsung building Samsung Wallet with mobile driver's licenses? What's the purpose? And how do you explain that to somebody like my father-in-law who could be a potential user?
Yeah, hopefully we can convert your father-in-law, or maybe he's already a user. You never know. So really the goal is to provide great experiences on our devices, right? And that may be our mobile phones, it may be our Galaxy smartwatch, and in the future, it may be other connected devices. We've got an entire set of IoT, we've got TVs and appliances and so on. We're the leader in a lot of these categories. So we think that there's a lot of use cases for identity. We think it sits at the core of the wallet. So when you think about making payments, ultimately, you might make a payment along with ID for a high value purchase, or a check-in at a hospital or doctor's visit where you submit ID and copay and maybe your insurance card all at the same time. We think there's a lot of use cases that ID will support, and really does support today, just in the physical format. And we think we'll start moving more quickly into the digital format. The wallets are a great place to hold that ID securely. We've got a very high level device security with our embedded secure element, our trusted environment. And our role is to provision those IDs, secure them on device, and then ultimately transmit and deliver them in a secure, reliable, interoperable way.
Yeah, and that all makes sense from a security standpoint. As a user, I'd want to make sure that this is all kind of locked down. If I change my perspective a bit toward the state that's issuing the ID, for example, or if I turn my perspective to a business who's interested in potentially accepting that ID, I might be interested in making sure that the right ID gets to the right user. So do you mind walking through how this works, right? If I'm going from nothing to getting a digital ID provisioned, what are the steps that I go through, or what is the security or assurance connected to those steps that would give me confidence that the right user is getting the right digital ID?
Sure. So in order to provision that ID onto the device, you're going to add a card, you open up the device, you open up your wallet, you biometric in, and then you hit the plus symbol to add a card. And in the case of Samsung Wallet, you'll be selecting a digital ID. You'll be specifically selecting a mobile driver's license or maybe another type of ID. And then you go through the provisioning process. So what that means is that you're going to take your plastic card. So you start with a physical document, in this case, the plastic driver's license that's been issued to you by your state government. You're going to scan the front of that driver's license, the back of that driver's license, so essentially taking a photo of those. And then you're going to do a liveness check. And that means you hold the phone in front of your face. If it's passive, it will just take a look at your face and say, okay, I've got it, small video. If it's active, it may ask you to blink twice or look this way or that way. It will capture you, so it knows that the right person is the same person taking the photo of your license, and it will package that up and we'll end up proofing that. So we'll say, okay, is this a real document? Is it really you? And then if the answer to those questions are yes, it will get passed back to the state back end, who will then make the final decision about whether they trust the package and that they should issue that ID onto the device.
Got it. And I assume the state is doing some kind of decisioning on their end, as you mentioned, based on their data as well, right? So are they matching the data that they get on the front end, it's captured from the document, with the data that's on their records to make sure it matches the source of truth?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the state has the final say in whether they want to issue, just like a bank has the final say whether they're going to issue your credit card to you. The state will have the final say with your mobile driver's license or your state ID, and they want to look at it and make the final decision. So they'll compare it on their back end and make sure that they're comfortable. And if they're not comfortable, they may ask you to do some additional steps and go into an extended review process where they can look at it more closely. They can verify it with you and then ultimately provision, or if they have some reason to not provision the document.
Great. Well, how about from the privacy angle? We've talked a bit about security here. How about on the privacy side? How can I know that as a user using this digital ID that my data is not going to be misused or something, or I'm not going to accidentally share it with somebody who's not who they say they are, or they're phishing me or something like that, right? What things are in place there to help address those concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everything should be put in context to what we do today with our physical IDs. So we are constantly being asked to present identification for a variety of things, right? It might be opening a bank account, a physical branch, or it might be traveling, it might be checking into a hotel, could be applying for a loan online or leasing an apartment and loading up. And we go through the same process. We take our physical document. We might, if it's online, take a front and back picture of it and upload it along with maybe some other selfie or that type of capability. But that's what we're doing today. So when you think about that, when you hand that document over to another party, maybe the clerk at the liquor store, they have access, they're going to scan all of your data. If you take a photo of it at the doctor's office, it goes into a big pile and there's paperwork and your license is in plain view for anybody that's got access to that stack of documents. When it comes to a mobile presentment, the relying party is being asked to only request the data that is required for that use case. If you're buying alcohol, they don't need to know your address. They don't need to know your name, right? They just need to know that you're over 21. So there's a certain set of information for each use case, and the sort of selective disclosure aspect where we limit the information, or the relying party requests only the information that they need. And it's never visible to any party based on the fact that you're carrying a card or might display it to somebody that you didn't intend to, right? So there's increased privacy just from that alone.
Yeah, I've told this story on the podcast before, but once I was traveling and ended up in Colorado where I'd forgotten my ID, couldn't rent a car. And if only I had a mobile driver's license that was accepted by that car rental company and could have used that. But instead, we had to go to a different car rental company where my wife, who luckily had her ID on her, presented her driver's license, and they just take a photocopy of it and put a piece of paper. And I guarantee they have a piece of paper of it and probably a plain image sitting in a CRM somewhere or whatever that's just going to sit there for who knows how long. So clearly, that's a much worse outcome than if she were able to just prove just only what they needed to share to get the car rental done, or if I could have just presented just what I needed to share to get through that process. So yeah, I'm in full agreement with you there.
Yeah, I'd also say, Riley, there's also other benefits to mobile. Just to give you an example, the other day I was in New York, and this is literally 3 days ago, and my phone during the night, just based on where it was positioned, slipped through the crevice between the wall and the bed, and the bed was bolted down, and my credit cards fell out of it, and my Amex card is still sitting underneath that bed, right? So I canceled the card, but the mobile payment, that credit card in my wallet still works, right? And it's up to date. So that doesn't get canceled along with it. And this is a benefit of mobile devices and mobile IDs as well. If you're in a situation where you don't have your document, you can recover it a whole lot faster. And it's important for situations like yours when you're trying to rent a car and you're out in Colorado. It's even more important when you're in a disaster zone, right? Maybe you don't have your documents and you need to get some relief, but you might have your phone, nothing else, right? So we think digital identity and just the ability to digitize a lot of these documents becomes very important for a lot of different situations.
Yeah, fully agree. I've had people ask me before, well, what happens if your phone dies? My phone dies sometimes, and then you're just totally out of luck, right? And I'm like, well, no. I mean, yes, you can't use your digital ID if your phone is dead or something, sure. But then that's why you have the physical one. And if something happens to the physical one, well, then you got the digital. I mean, it's not a zero-sum game here, right? Like we can have the
Right.
benefits of the digital ID when we want those benefits, and we can have the benefits of the piece of plastic when we want that. And we can use all these tools together like a big happy family, right? What do you see as the biggest benefit that relying parties find, or for the early use cases that you've seen for people using Samsung Wallet? Is the primary benefit, you think, this privacy angle? Is it the security angle, or is it something else that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think when we talk about relying parties, we've been in this ecosystem for a while and we've seen some of these relying parties start to grow, but we're looking for sort of the explosion or the snowball to really roll downhill. It was in the early days where we thought that the uptick on mobile payments would happen super quick. Why wouldn't you want to do it? But old habits die hard, right? And it's very difficult when you're used to just pulling your credit card out and you're standing at the market, you use it anyway. So I do think there's benefits that we're seeing from digital ID, primarily with the speed of the transaction. In some cases, it's the recording of information, either for compliance purposes or for just the ability to know that you've captured the right data. But essentially, I think a lot of the values we're going to see in the future, right? So the thing that happened with mobile payment, as an example, is a lot of the use cases were just replacing plastic, right? So if you're just replacing what you do with plastic today, you're going to see a much slower uptick and more limited benefits than when you start to see the brand new use cases that can only be done because you've got this digital credential. And I think that those will ultimately come. I think we're still in this mode of how do I deliver my mobile ID to a reader to prove age over 21? Great scenario there is like a vending machine instead of having to stand in a long line at the stadium in order to get my beer or tapping my way through TSA, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be these new use cases that crop up because the technology exists that are going to really generate excitement and more consistent usage.
Yeah, so I hear you there. I think the types of scenarios that will be unlocked when digital ID is ubiquitous, even let's fast forward just a little bit, right? I'm looking to the future and I can totally see scenarios that are really difficult to achieve now. But one of the challenges, of course, is the chicken and egg problem of like there's only 20 something states issuing digital driver's licenses right now. And then within those states, adoption is relatively early, to put it one way, right? It's just early on the curve. And what that means is there's not very many places to use it. And so I wanted to touch on the product you recently announced. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so this is one I'm really excited about. We just announced our Samsung ID. It's our own issued credential. It's called Samsung ID with Clear because we've partnered with Clear for proofing of that ID and for expansion. So we're looking at our own ID that's based on a passport as the root of trust that we're putting into cool benefits in the sense that you'll be able to tap at TSA right out of the gate. It's an ISO standard credential that's interoperable and will work in other use cases where mDLs are accepted or other digital credentials are accepted. It will be available in the US for any passport holder initially. It will be available for foreign passports as well as we move forward. So we'll be able to start adding more global into the product and the ability to get foreign passports. There's a capability that Clear has for stepped up authentication all the way up to an IAL3 security access level that's higher than what we do today with some of the mobile credentials using biometrics. So they're very competent at that. You see them do it at the airport where they do the eyeball scan to do the biometric. So we're getting this in market and we're excited about it. It comes in a couple of different flavors. There's the base card, which shows up in white card format if you're a base user. And if you're already a Clear Plus member or you're upgrading to Clear Plus, we show you the blue format, which indicates that. So you're being matched to your account. And then we're providing you with the card that is the authentication level for that credential.
Great. So this means, if I'm hearing you right, that it unlocks supply of digital IDs, if we use the supply and demand example, right? But it basically means that many more people will be eligible to create a digital ID in the Samsung Wallet that can then be used wherever these digital IDs or wherever Samsung Wallet is accepted. Is that right? And I guess where do you think that goes? Like, what impact do you think that will have?
Yeah, I think that's right on. It's coverage for the entire US, so it's not limited to only the states that have supported mDLs. It will be expanded globally, up to 40 countries or so. So we'll start that process. And I think that we're tempering expectations a little bit because their use cases need to be out there in order to really support the use of the credential and the excitement to load that credential and then go out and use it. We think those are going to come. We see those with mDL and now with this derived credential from Passport or Samsung ID. And we think that it will take off with all sorts of situations from opening bank accounts, loans, leases, and lots of other scenarios that will just pop up where we use ID today and somewhere where they're net new that we don't use ID.
Yeah, and even, for example, the fact that you mentioned the step up to an IL3 level, that's a remarkable capability in the sense that companies spend a lot of money trying to do that, right? It's a difficult thing. It's not a trivial thing to accomplish. And so reaching high trust levels or assurance levels like that, I think is a great way to kind of kickstart adoption.
Yeah, we think that Samsung has got the most secure device, right? So we think that our devices are as secure as anybody and are purchased for that reason. Clear is known for secure access. They're known for secure access through the airport. They've got a great brand name around that. And we think that by bringing these two things together, you're putting a secure access credential onto a secure device, and then it can be leveraged for lots of scenarios. We've got other capabilities around workforce solutions and identifications and step ups, and we can take advantage of that.
Yeah, the partnership there is pretty remarkable. I know that kind of a partnership is no easy feat to accomplish. I was just about to ask the motivation for that. Sounds like you've already spoken to that, though. It's the trust that they've established in that brand. Do you envision the Samsung IDs being co-branded with Clear in the long run? Do you envision other types of companies being able to co-brand these types of credentials and help proof for Samsung IDs? Or in the reverse, if I just have a Clear credential and a Samsung phone, can I go the other way where I just get a Clear credential that's just explicitly Clear and not necessarily a Samsung ID with Clear credential? Or how do you kind of see the ecosystem evolving from here?
Yeah, the ecosystem may evolve in a number of different ways. I think there'll be new credentials that come into the wallet over time. I think this is a natural next step for us. And one thing we've tried to do with the Samsung ID with Clear product is to match to make sure that if you've got a Clear account today and you push that ID into wallet, that it's the same ID. It's going to show up with the same security level. It will be called the Samsung ID with Clear when it gets into the Samsung wallet, but it will be the same user. It's the same identity on the back end. So we want to make sure that it's not two different credentials for a user, that they can use them seamlessly at the locations where they're available to use. And we'll kind of grow it from there. In terms of other branding options, we haven't really got into it with other companies. There might be some good things to do in the future as well.
Yeah, very cool. Now that we've touched on that, we mentioned that this unlocks coverage or eligibility beyond the initial set of states that are issuing mDLs. I congratulate you on the recent press release with California as well, which is a big unlock.
Thank you.
How do you see the state ecosystem evolving over the next handful of years? This is a question we get a lot. It's like a forecast for us, or prognosticate a bit on how you think this landscape evolves. When do you think we'll have 50 states or maybe 45 states, considering there might be a few holdouts or whatever, but virtually all states issuing mDLs? How long do you think until we get to that point?
Yeah, first off, thank you for California. California was a big deal for us. It's a big state. It was a big project. It took a little bit to get it done, but we're excited that it's out and available. In terms of when all the states come, man, that's a tough question, right? It's hard to say. I think there was an early period where there were a number of states that started and there were some fits and stops because the initial concept around doing things like a flash pass ID on your device that looks like your license started and then stopped. And I think that that stunted some of the growth for some of the states, right? They pulled back a bit. Then there were a number of early adopter states that really leaned in on the ISO standard MDoc credential. And I think we're kind of through some of those early adopters, the ones that were really pushing, and we're grateful to them for doing that. And I think I see a sort of steady stream. I think there's going to be a number of new states each year. These projects take a while. A number of the states are doing modernization projects, so they want to get their sort of house in order before they move forward. Some of the states may be still skeptical on some of the privacy and security aspects of digital credentials and need to get comfortable with that, and that's understandable as well. So personally, I think it's going to take probably a little longer than all of us want it to take or hope that it takes. And there'll be some handful number a year, and it's going to take a few years before all states are represented. And as you said, there probably would be some holdouts as well.
Yeah, I guess maybe let me ask you this. As someone who is speaking with representatives of various states as your job, right? Have you seen a different level of urgency from the state representatives in the last year or so versus before? Because it seems like with the way that AI is evolving and giving everybody the tools to ubiquitously create synthetic identities and deepfakes and impersonations and things like that, it feels like mobile driver's licenses and other types of digital ID are like just what the world needs right now, and that there's so much latent demand for trust on the internet. And yet one of the challenges of that is just the adoption challenge, right? Do you think that message is felt by everybody in the same way that I'm describing it across the board, or is there more urgency now than there was before to issue credentials, is really my question.
In my opinion, so again, I come at it from a wallet perspective. In my opinion, yes, to some extent, but not enough. And I think that we have, over the course of the last 25, 30 years, we've created this thing called the internet, which is the Wild West, where anybody can be anybody, right? And they can represent themselves as anybody they want or any 10 people that they want. And there's a lot of bad that comes out of that. We look at a lot of good that comes out of it, but a lot of bad as well. And we look at fraud, the kinds of fraud that we think we can tamp down with digital ID. And I think it's really important that we do that. We look at it as financial fraud largely. So in the community, we talk a lot about the billions of dollars of fraud that was happening in the world, that if you had to prove identity, that maybe a lot of that would go away. But I think an even bigger problem is the fraud that you're seeing perpetrated online or in social channels where even kids are being taken advantage of. And I think that society needs to kind of step up and do something in order to limit those problems. I think digital ID is one tool that we should be using in order to help solve some of the social problems, societal problems. Certainly, it's great for reducing fraud and friction, sales friction as well, and getting people through a funnel. But I think it's going to solve all of those. In terms of whether people hear that message as much as I believe it, my sense is not yet, right? It takes a few real use cases out there where people can see, look, if I implement this type of digital credential acceptance, that front back selfie prove who I am, and I use my biometric, and it took me 5 seconds, all of a sudden I'll get religion around it because my sales funnel is moving a lot faster. If you realize that you don't have as much fraud because that document is known to be a trusted document as opposed to something that was cooked up by AI or some middle schooler in their basement, you're going to get religion around it a whole lot faster.
Yeah. We published the Digital ID Acceleration Manifesto a month or two ago, and the message there is that the time is now. Like, we've got to accelerate. Pace of change that we're seeing in the agentic AI space, or whatever, is just breathtaking. The capability growth of video models and image models and things like that is astounding. And if somebody starts now to get their organization ready to issue credentials or something like that, by the time they're actually doing it, all these capabilities are just going to be that much greater, right? And so I'm just trying to, in some level, sound the alarm and say, like, people need this stuff, right? And so
Yeah.
big shout out to you and your team and what you've done to bring states, as well as in partnership with Clear, the Samsung ID that you've recently launched, and everything like that, to the masses. But I think it's going to be an industry-wide effort to get the market to the point where people are, yeah.
And maybe, Riley, I can interject. We're also working with a number of different companies like yours to try to drive these credentials and use of these credentials in market. We do have a number of companies that we're working with in the KYC, AML space that are implementing solutions. We think that that's one way to try to drive broader based adoption, is to work with companies that already have customers that they're doing authentication and identification services for, and let them add this into their basket of products or offerings. And then as the number of credentials grow, the mix between digital IDV events versus what we're doing with physical cards and taking pictures dramatically change, right? So we're launching some of these. One is being launched with Secure as an example of a big player in the space that we're working with to bring these solutions to market, and there'll be others, right? So we think it'll start to grow. We think the snowball will start going downhill, but it's still taking some time.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing I was just going to mention about the Digital ID Acceleration Manifesto is that if you're aligned with it, you can sign your name, you can sign on to the manifesto. And we've had people use their mobile driver's license from Samsung Wallet to prove they are a legit signer of this manifesto. So it's a small use case. There's only 100 or so people who've signed the document, but it's just a little example of a little place where a little bit of trust has been built in that signer's name via the Samsung Wallet integration that we have.
It's great to hear. I'll have to go check that out. We're trying to do our part to broaden these. We've got a number of devices. We're working closely with Credence ID, with physical readers. We put them into State Farm Arena in Atlanta for age over 21 alcohol purchases. We are working with other states to try to promote events that do digital read as well and verification. And we're hoping to do some in California and in Montana and some other states moving forward too.
Well, Rob, this has been a great conversation, and I hope it's helpful to my father-in-law as well as to the other listeners. I know a lot of jurisdictions, people at DMVs and other administrators within various state departments listen to the podcast. What would you suggest to those folks if there are people who want to get in touch about accelerating their digital ID journeys in partnership with Samsung? Where should they go? Where can they find you?
Yeah. So one thing I would say is, when your father-in-law listens to this, if he doesn't understand anything, I want you to give him my phone number so he can call me and we're going to have a chat about Samsung Wallet and digital ID. In terms of partnerships, anybody that's interested in talking to us about being a relying party or working with us on testing or those type of scenarios or issuing, you can feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's probably a good place to do it. Or we can share emails if that makes sense as well.
Great. And then one more kind of comment. I know that your focus is in the US primarily. What should people understand about Samsung Wallet's international strategy, I guess? Like, obviously, there's the European, the EUDI whole initiative, which is a big topic of conversation in our industry. And Samsung, obviously, is based in Asia as well, right? In South Korea. So there's obviously an angle there and an exposure there that is unique among other operating system wallet players. So maybe as the last kind of topic here, what should people understand about the international strategy, and how should we expect that to evolve over the next little while?
Yeah, I mean, Samsung is a big global player, right? So we're a big company. We've got regional teams in each of the areas that are working on these projects in Europe, in Australia, really around the world where we're located. It's interesting because we're really governed a bit by what's happening, what's going on in those regions, and how the identification is getting rolled out and what that looks like. But in each case, we are looking to participate in the ecosystem. We're looking to be the device and provide a wallet that can, again, provision, securely store, and transmit those IDs. And we've participated in testing and interop events and so on in regions all over the world. So our goal is to provide, again, great experiences on our devices. We think that includes the wallet use case. We think that it includes ID as sort of a core tenet of that wallet. And if it's being done a certain way in Europe, that's a little bit different than the US or someplace else in the world, then we're going to understand the integration and how we get that ID integrated in a way that it can take advantage of our device.
Yeah, great. That makes sense. It's aligned to the strategy for sure. And that is a helpful overview. Is there anything, Rob, anything that you wanted to make sure that our listeners take away?
The primary thing that I'm hoping people understand is that Samsung Wallet is a primary wallet. We're trying to be inclusive of as many credentials. We'd like to grow the wallet over time. We're trying to help the community drive relying party use cases. We are looking to just participate in a way that helps to grow the ecosystem entirely, right? So, well, with that said, we recognize there are other viable wallets as well. We think those are great products too. And it's user choice on our side, but we're hoping people gravitate to Samsung Wallet, see the benefits that we have connected devices.
I think that's a great place to end. Thanks a lot, Rob. This has been a lot of fun, and it's always great to connect with you.
Thanks, Riley.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this content, the best way to signal to us that the content is valuable is to share it with others who will benefit from it. Meanwhile, if your organization is interested in accepting Samsung Wallet in your flows or any other digital IDs around the world, you should connect with us at Trinsic. You can find me on LinkedIn or X, or you can reach out to us on our website at trinsic.id. If you haven't already, visit trinsic.id/podcast to subscribe to the Future of Identity newsletter, where we'll send all the news that we rely on every week or two. And you can find all of our prior episodes there as well. Thanks again.